Good afternoon. I am Janice Lewis George, council member for Ward 4 and chairperson of the council's Committee on Facilities and Family Services. Today is Thursday, March 9th, 2024, and the time is 12:52 p.m. I am calling this committee markup to order. And for the record, I'd like to note that we have a quorum consisting of Ward 1 council member Brianna Doe, Ward 3 Councilmember Matthew Fruman, Ward 5 Councilmember Zachary Parker, and at-large Councilmember Robert White. Today, the committee will consider and vote on its report and recommendations on the fiscal year 2025 budget for agencies under its purview. We received the mayor's budget proposal just 36 days ago on Wednesday, April 3rd. Over the past 5 weeks, we've held 4 budget oversight hearings, received testimony from well over 100 public witnesses, and sent hundreds of pre- and post-hearing questions to better understand what's in this budget. I am proud that together we found ways in this budget to lift up working families, safeguard vulnerable youth, support our neighbors with disabilities, fill major gaps, and invest in critical district infrastructure. I want to personally thank all of the witnesses who showed up or provided testimony at our oversight hearings, at performance oversight hearings, and our budget oversight hearings. I also want to thank the agency directors and their staff and agency fiscal officers for putting in long hours, being engaged, and following up with my committee staff and witnesses on so many issues. Together, we've put together a solid set of budget and policy recommendations that I believe will support the following 3 key themes. 1, transparency and responsive maintenance of public facilities. 2nd, a robust child and family well-being system. And last, protecting the rights of accessibility for and services to people with disabilities. Now I want to touch on each and the committee's budget recommendations for them. I will start with the Department of General Services. The mission of the Department of General Services to build, maintain, and sustain the district's real estate portfolio, including more than 42 million square feet of DC-owned and leased property. Every single day, DGS is working to ensure that families in DC have safe, comfortable, and dignified places to gather, to learn, to exercise, and to play. The committee recommends approval of the mayor's proposed fiscal year 2025 operating budget with the following modifications. The committee's proposed fiscal year 25 budget for DGS is $416.6 million, including over $100 million for facilities maintenance. The committee's budget includes $7.5 million for dedicated work order reduction funding, the single most effective mechanism we found for improving the quality and timeliness of work order responses, more dedicated resources. These funds are distributed across DGS portfolio of client agencies, so we should see improvements across schools, parks, senior centers, police station, fire stations, and the rest of facilities DGS supports. Next, I'm proud to sustain the mayor's proposed investment in HVAC preventative maintenance in our schools for $13.6 million in fiscal year 25 and citywide at $4.5 million. These investments will help prevent problems from before they happen and keep our students and teachers focused on learning. We've also got $2.1 million dedicated for elevator repairs citywide, which is a persistent issue we noted during our tours of all of our facilities, as well as during performance oversight hearings. $950,000 to continue the life cycle administrative support team, better known as the LAST team, who are working to support quality control and confidence in our work order data. We're also investing $500,000 in a transfer to the Department of Energy and Environment to help strengthen their capacity to manage our publicly owned forest. This was one of the central issues we aimed to solve with my Office of Natural Areas Conservation bill last summer, and I'm grateful we can get that important work started in this year's budget. Further, together with the mayor's proposed budget of $50,000, the committee is adding $250,000 to support responses to lock and door requests in DCPS buildings. We know this is DGS' single most frequent work order request, so these funds will be used, and more importantly, they'll help keep our children, our educators, and our school buildings safer. This budget also includes key investments in DGS work to support the district's real estate portfolio, snow removal services, energy utility costs, security guards, and capital construction program. We're also including 30 detailed policy recommendations to improve DGS operations and service delivery. The first half of these focus on DGS efforts to improve the timeliness of work order responses. We spent a lot of time on this during the performance oversight hearing earlier this year, and I'm proud to share that over the last 2 years, from fiscal year 22 to 24 to date, DGS on-time completion rate has increased from 47% of requests to 71%. That's a huge improvement in a short time span. This speaks to the leadership of Director Delano Hunter, the hard work of his team, and the work of us at the council as well. Our report goes through each problem type from electrical to HVAC to plumbing with recommendations for how DGS can do even better in fiscal year 25. Next, we have recommendations related to school and park readiness. Together, we visited over 20 schools and parks last summer in all 8 wards, and those visits helped inform the oversight and recommendations we have today. For example, one issue we observed last year were overflowing litter cans in our parks. We strongly considered trying to move this work fully to DGS's responsibility, but it proved too complex and costly to clear up in this budget. We're recommending DPW, DGS, and DPR continue working on this to make sure our parks are kept clean. We've got several more recommendations. I won't get into these remarks, likely improving DGS system for contractor accountability, ensuring safe elevators, a sustainable future, and improving its coordination with other client agencies. That's a lot in this report, and I encourage members of the public to give it a look. Next, I want to talk about a subtitle that was referred to this committee and a new subtitle we're adding to related to the process improvements for DGS. The mayor proposed the Greener Government Buildings Amendment Act of 2024 to modify requirements of which types of buildings projects need to be reviewed by the Green Building Advisory Council, as well as the criteria by which the GBAC determines eligibility for exemptions from net zero requirements. This committee is recommending that we strike this subtitle, which was also referred to Committee on Transportation. The mayor's subtitle includes several potentially substantial changes to our green buildings rules that will be better suited for a full hearing. We also received testimony in opposition from several leading environmental organizations during our budget hearing last month. The reality is that the GBAC has the discretion to make these decisions, and that process is working now. And finally, the committee is recommending the inclusion of the Department of General Services Process Improvements Amendment Act of 2024 as a new subtitle. This subtitle does 5 things to strengthen transparency and the strategic work of DGS. First, the subtitle requires the expansion of DGS Public Work Order Dashboard to include work orders from all client agencies, not just DCPS and DPR as it is now, as well as publication of several performance metrics, including their HVAC watch list. It also requires that DGS make this data available for download. Second, the subtitle requires DGS to ensure adequate access to Salesforce for client agencies' employees and the committee. We observed issues with on-the-ground staff not always having their own access to Salesforce to enter and manage work orders, and this should help resolve that. We are also giving the committee direct read-only access to Salesforce to help ensure we can provide timely updates to the public about the status of work orders in their communities. Third, the subtitle requires DGS to rank requests to repair interior doors to instructional and regularly used administrative spaces and DCPS facilities as high priority work orders to be completed within 10 days. Right now, most of these requests are considered routine level to be completed in 45 days. This will help keep our schools safe. Fourth, the subtitle requires the DGS publish the results of an annual school readiness checklist each October. We started this last year and believe it's a great way to get feedback on the state of our school facilities. Fifth, and perhaps most importantly, the subtitle requires that DGS develop an annual comprehensive maintenance plan, including how they'll approach preventative, routine, and reactive maintenance work order across its full portfolio. Believe it or not, DGS does not currently have such a plan, and we believe strongly that establishing clear goals, metrics, and a strategic vision will help drive DGS to even greater heights. I look forward to continuing our work together to improve the maintenance and construction of our schools, parks, and facilities with DGS this next year. Moving to the second theme of the committee's report, a robust child and family well-being system. And we'll start with the Office of the Ombudsperson for Children, also known as OFC. This committee is proud to restore $1,247,000 for OFC, the entire amount of the agent's fiscal year 2025 assessed budget needs. The committee also strikes the mayor's proposed subtitle that would have abolished this agency. The Office of Ombudsperson for Children is not duplicative, as the mayor claims. During the performance and budget oversight hearings, we heard from numerous public witnesses who explained with both the importance and uniqueness of OFC's work. For example, OFC ensures transparency and accountability in the child welfare system, identifies systemic issues, and provides recommendations across the entire child welfare system to support interagency coordination, comprehensively tracks crossover youth, and providing systemic analysis and resolves day-to-day problems for district children and families. These functions are life-changing, invaluable, and done by no other entity in the District of Columbia. It is also important to note that OFC is truly independent and impartial because it is an agency of the legislative branch. The ombudsperson does not report to the director of CFSA and does not even report to the mayor. OFC was deliberately established outside of the executive branch to provide the council with an oversight mechanism that has the authority and resources to conduct the robust level of supervision and inspection that a government agency that has the power to remove children from their parents requires. The mayor's proposed abolishment of the agency is an unfortunate act of an executive interference in the council's legislative oversight authority. And I hope that this is the last time the executive does this with the existence of OFC, given their invaluable work to the district. I want to acknowledge Councilmember Brianna Doe for her leadership in creating the OFC and continuing to fight for its existence all these years later. And thank her and the Committee on Public Works and Operations for sending $400,000 to the committee to help us fully fund this office. I also want to thank the ombudsperson, Patrina Jones-Jess, for her steadfast leadership of the agency for over a year, and especially during the last several weeks as the jobs of her and her talented staff hung in the balance. Ombudsperson Jones-Jess has already transformed the lives of so many district families and has the appreciation and confidence of myself, this committee, and the entire council. This committee also recommends amending the mayor's proposed subtitle that in effect would have eliminated the Commission on Poverty. In doing so, the committee transferred $179,000 to the Committee on the Executive Administration and Labor to continue the commission's important work by maintaining the executive director position. I want to thank Councilmember Trayon White for his unwavering commitment to this commission and work to alleviate poverty in the district. Next, I will turn to CFSA. Our Child Family Service Agency. In recent years, Child Family Service Agency has made tremendous progress in transforming into a child and family well-being agency, most notably through the establishment of the 211 Warm Line. Now with the Warm Line struggling families can reach out for help themselves instead of being connected to resources only after someone else files a report of abuse and neglect. I congratulate Director Matthews and his team for this incredibly difficult and impactful work. However, as the district's designated child welfare agency, CFSA still also holds tremendous power in the district by having the ability to remove children from their parents. Due to this power, no matter what positive actions this agent takes, any level of involvement in the district's child welfare system can be traumatic for families. I believe CFSA and I share the same goals of preventing involvement with CFSA to the greatest extent possible while ensuring the health and safety of the district's children and providing youth and families with significant resources and support when they do become involved in the child welfare system. In furthering these goals, the committee made several important changes to the CFSA's fiscal year 2025 budget. First, the committee restores all $1.35 million to fully fund Safe Shores, the district's statutorily designated Children's Advocacy Center. Safe Shores provides survivor-centered intervention, hope, and healing for children and families affected by abuse, trauma, and violence in the district, and works to prevent and end child abuse and neglect through promising practices, policies, and partnerships. The mayor's proposed fiscal year 2025 budget removed all funding for Safe Shores. I do not believe the shared sacrifice of a tight budget should be shared by child victims of physical and sexual abuse. By restoring all funding, we are ensuring Safe Shores' important work continues. I also want to thank Councilmember Robert White and the Committee on Housing and Councilmember McDuffie and the Committee on Business and Economic Development for together transferring $365,000 to the committee to ensure Safe Shores was fully funded. Thank you. Second, the committee adds $400,000 to CFSA's home visiting programs. Home visiting programs are designed to support parents who are at risk for child abuse and neglect due to accumulation of risk factors they experience. CFSA directly funds 3 home visiting programs: the Parent Support and Home Visitation Program at Community Family Life Services, the Father-Child Attachment Program at Mary Center, and Home Instruction for Parents of Preschool Youngsters Program at Family Place. In fiscal year 2023, these programs served a total of 209 families. Last year, the committee included a $300,000 increase of recurring funds for home visiting, but those funds were not included in the mayor's proposed budget for fiscal year 2025. The committee increases funding to home visiting programs to a total of $520,000. So hero home visitors are given the resources and support they deserve and need to assist vulnerable families in the district. Third, the committee adds $200,000 in one-time enhancement for our fantastic Healthy Families Thriving Community Collaboratives. Collaboratives are and will continue to be the primary community responders for struggling families who seek assistance by calling the 211 warm line. During the performance and budget oversight hearings, we heard directly from multiple collaboratives that they don't have enough capacity to meet current needs and will have even less capacity to do so once the warm line is fully launched in October of this year. When a struggling family calls the warm line seeking help, the district needs to be able to send them to a place that has the resources to provide the family with what they need to prevent children from possibly ending up in the child welfare system or the school to prison pipeline. The committee increases funding for collaboratives by $200,000, so these essential community responders have more resources to better meet the growing needs of the district's most vulnerable and struggling families. We continue to thank our Healthy Families and Thriving Community Collaboratives for all they do in the district to help our families who are struggling most. Fourth, the committee adds $100,000 to the Grandparent Caregiver Program, better known as GCP, and the Close Relative Caregiver Program, CRCP. The GCP and GRCP help low-income grandparents and close relatives who are raising kin by providing subsidy payments to cover some of the high costs of caring for children in the district. I want to take a moment to highlight the powerful testimony of Kimberly Holmes, a Ward 8 resident who received the Close Relative Caregiver Program subsidy for 3 years. Kimberly used the CRCP subsidy to pay for things her niece needs to be happy and healthy, like food, clothing, school supplies, and extracurricular activities. After 3 years, something good happened. She got a good job. But then something bad happened. She lost access to the subsidy payments because her income rose to over 200% of the federal poverty level. In other words, she fell off the benefits cliff. To prevent kin caregivers like Kimberly from similarly losing access to these much needed benefits, the committee recommends inclusion of the Grandparent and Caregiver Subsidy Eligibility Amendment Act of 2024 as a subtitle to the fiscal year 2025 Budget Support Act. This subtitle is based on B250464, the Grandparent and Caregiver Subsidy Eligibility Act of 2023, which Councilmember Parker and I introduced last year. I want to thank Councilmember Parker for introducing this bill and his leadership on addressing the benefits cliff issue. The bill, as introduced, raised the program's income eligibility threshold from 200% of the federally defined poverty level to 300%. During the committee's November hearing on the bill, we heard from many caregivers with stories similar to Kimberly's. We also heard from caregivers who were not eligible for the programs because of their income was too high because they also received federal benefits like SNAP and TANF. To address this problem as well, the committee's subtitle not only raises the program's eligibility threshold from 200% to 300%, but it also prohibits federal benefits like SNAP and TANF from counting as income for the program's income eligibility calculation. While this subtitle does not have a cost itself, the committee adds $75,000 in one-time funding for the GCP and $25,000 in one-time funding for the CRCP in anticipation of more families applying and being approved for the programs due to expanded eligibility under the subtitle. Moving to the third theme of this report, protecting the rights of accessibility for and services to people with disabilities. I'll start with the Department of Disability Services. The committee makes 2 important changes to DDS budget. First, the committee adds $416,000 in reoccurring funds for the clothing allowance and human care agreements for people with disabilities in DDA residential placements. The mayor's fiscal year 2025 proposed budget eliminated the $50 per month allowance that DDA has long included in human care agreements with disability residential service providers. During the budget oversight hearing, we heard from disability service providers who explained the benefits of the allowance go well beyond the ability to purchase clothing. She said, the clothing allowance plays a vital role in enabling individuals to purchase seasonal attire, promoting their sense of dignity and normalcy. For those who are unable to work and profoundly disabled, it is especially crucial as it allows them to dress appropriately for each season, fostering a positive self-image. Without this allowance, many lack the means to afford such basic necessities. In terminating the long dependent on resources, DDS plan was for supported persons in residential placements to instead use their $150 per month personal needs allowance to pay for clothing. In last year's budget, the personal needs allowance was increased from $100 to $150. However, this increase should not be seen as extra money that supported persons can now use for clothing. The reason the P&A was raised 50% last year was because it was the first increase of the P&A since 2007. If supported persons were forced to use their P&A to pay for clothes, also they would be in the same position as they were in 2007, wiping out 17 years of progress that people with developmental disabilities fought hard to make. The committee adds back $416,000 to DDA's budget for the clothing allowance for people in residential placements so they can continue to spend their P&As on other personal necessities besides clothing. Second, the committee adds $900,000 in one-time funds for the administrative fee for the DDA residential providers. The mayor's fiscal year 2025 budget cut the administrative fee by $1.5 million or 50%. This cut was a continuation of the $700,000 mid-year cut DDS imposed on disability service providers this year with less than 1 month's notice. The message from both disability service providers and supported persons has been resoundingly clear. Since this cut was announced, the drastic cut would have jeopardized providers' ability to offer care at the quantity and quality necessary to support people with disabilities. It would have completely destabilized the entire network of disability service providers in the district, likely leading to layoffs and possibly closures. The committee also adds $900,000 for the administrative fee in order to offer providers, their dedicated staff, and supported person with disabilities with more stability and resources to maintain quality of care in fiscal year 2025. Next, turning to the Office of Disability Rights, also known as ODR. ODR is the district's subject matter expert on disabilities rights and ADA compliance. The committee recommends approval of ODR's $2.5 million budget for fiscal year 2025, which includes $1.3 million for the ADA evaluation compliance. While we did not make any changes to the budget, the committee includes 10 policy recommendations. Unfortunately, the sad truth is there are far too many instances of district agencies, services, and spaces violating the ADA. These violations aren't just illegal, but make it difficult and sometimes impossible for people with disabilities to access government resources they need and deserve. I'm looking forward to working with ODR to improve the district's overall level of ADA compliance. Specifically, I believe ODR should prioritize monitoring ADA compliance for agencies that have the highest levels of public interaction with government spaces and services, particularly DCPS and DPR. Take an active role in the district-wide budget process to identify ADA violations so the mayor and council can allocate resources to remedy violations accordingly. Conduct formal investigations into agencies' failure to remedy ADA barriers and refer persistent instances of agency ADA noncompliance to the Office of Human Rights in order to create a real deterrence and consequence for agencies that continue to violate the ADA, and further expand its collaboration with DGS to ensure ADA barriers that require a work order to remedy are addressed quickly. I want to say the district is incredibly lucky to have at the helm of ODR Director Matthew McCullough, a national leader and dedicated public servant. It has been an honor to work with Director McCullough over the last year and a half. I have the utmost confidence that under his leadership, ODR and I can continue to work together to reduce the number of ADA violations and get ADA violations remedied quicker so that all district government spaces and services are not just ADA compliant, but are truly accessible for students, seniors, visitors, and all district residents with disabilities. And finally, turning to the Mayor's Office of Deaf, Deafblind, and Hard of Hearing, also known as MODA. The committee recommends the Office of Deaf, Deafblind, and Hard of Hearing Amendment Act of 2024 as a Budget Support Act subtitle. Currently, MODA manages requests for ADA reasonable accommodations for effective communication, such as American Sign Language interpretation and communication access real-time translation, also known as CART, services for all executive agency under the mayor's purview. For the council, this responsibility lies with the Office of the Secretary. For the past year and a half, the committee and the Office of the Secretary have engaged with MODA on how the council can improve its level of accessibility for deaf, deafblind, deaf, disabled, late deafened, and hard of hearing district residents. I truly appreciate MODA's assistance in this regard, particularly by providing a cultural competency training to the council staff in January and participating in practice sessions to orchestrate the logistics of ASL interpretation and CART services for in-person and virtual committee oversight hearings. During this period, it has become clear to me that MODA's subject matter, expertise, and understanding of the nuances of effective communication accessibility is matched by no other entity in the district government. It is for this reason that I and the Office of Secretary believe that requests for interpreter services made to the council by members of the public should be processed and fulfilled by MODA. The committee adds $96,940 to fund the recommended subtitle to provide one FTE to manage interpreter requests made to the council, with the procedural details of the arrangement to be set in a memorandum of understanding between the agency and the council. I want to thank the entire MODA's team and especially Director Carrie Cook for their collaboration on this effort. I'm confident under Director Cook's leadership and unwavering commitment to accessibility, this transfer of responsibilities for interpreter services will lead to greater accessibility of council meetings, council hearings, and meetings for deaf, deafblind, deaf disabled, late deafened, and hard of hearing district residents. I will now move and open the floor to discussion on the report and recommendations of the Committee on Facilities and Family Services on the fiscal year 2025 budget. Is there any discussion on the report or BSA subtitle? Councilmember Nadeau.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for the dedication you and your team have shown in crafting this budget report. This fiscal year posed significant challenges for our district, but I'm heartened to witness my colleagues' commitment to prioritizing essential services for our most vulnerable residents and students. Regarding DGS, I commend this committee for its diligent oversight of work order response times, particularly concerning school maintenance and security. It's encouraging to note the improvement in DGS's on-time completion rates across various priority levels and issue types. Nonetheless, there remains substantial work ahead. I'm optimistic that this budget will facilitate initiatives aimed at further enhancing these completion rates. When our kids don't have working water fountains or bathrooms or are leaning in an environment with rats and roaches, they won't want to be in school. When safety issues like non-working cameras, broken locks and doors, and broken railings or bleachers aren't addressed, it undermines both student morale and educator effectiveness. Schools should be clean, well-maintained, safe environments so our students can focus fully on learning and being kids. Ensuring that DGS is functioning as efficiently as possible is no easy feat, but this committee's inclusion of the Department of General Services Process Improvements Amendment Act of 2024 is a huge step forward. The amendment requires the DGS conduct an annual school readiness checklist, a crucial step in the right direction. I hope we can explore funding this subtitle during the first reading of the budget. As many of you know, when the mayor dropped her budget last month, she eliminated funding for the Office of the Ombudsperson for Children. I applaud Councilmember Lewis George for rejecting that proposal and striking down the subtitle. My committee transferred $400,000 in recurring funds to help restore the agency's operations. Together, Councilmember Lewis George and I reinstated the agency's $1.24 million budget. This is our policy choice to reaffirm our commitment to safeguarding the rights of children and families in our communities. Additionally, I commend Councilmember Lewis George for her advocacy on several initiatives, restoring funding for Safe Shores, allocating $400,000 for home visiting programs, securing $200,000 for Thriving Communities Collaboratives, which also serve families in Ward 1, and maintaining funding for grandparent caregiver and the close relative caregiver programs. Thank you, Councilmember Lewis George, for your thoughtful policy decisions and my sincere gratitude to your staff for their tireless efforts. I look forward to seeing the priorities in this budget realized in the coming year.
Thank you. Councilmember Matt Freeman.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman Lewis George. I see this committee report as an extension of the really phenomenal work that you and your team have done from the start in this area. The work that you've done with DGS in partnership with DGS, I think resulted in a better budget in many ways coming from the mayor, and you've improved it even more. So grateful to you for the work that you're doing. As Councilmember Nadeau just said, there's a lot more work that needs to be done, but the progress is really tangible, and seeing the emphasis on funding for work order reduction, the funding for HVAC, which we know every year is such an issue, the funding for elevator repairs, which is really an issue. You have zeroed in on the places that are the biggest bruises in the system, and really grateful to you for your work doing that, but your work to move the system forward before then. And there are many things in this budget that are positive. I'm going to just shout out one more set of things, which is the funding for the grandparent and close relative caregiver initiatives. That is really important work and makes a very significant difference in the lives of our families. And so, among many of the things that I want to be grateful to you here in this budget for coming forward with, highlight that one and your work with DGS. So thank you very much. I look forward to voting for the report.
Councilman Robert White.
Thank you so much, Chairperson Lewis George, and your staff for your hard work and the time it took you to complete this budget. It really is a lot of work. I said this last year, and it's true again. I can see how much work you and your staff have put into the Department of General Services budget chapter and your oversight over the agency. This is not work that is ever going to get you in the papers, but we know how important this agency's mission is to the district and our residents. Your diligence is making a difference. I want to take a moment to mention some of the investments and policy proposals you've made in your committee report that stood out to me, including $250,000 to repair doors and locks at our schools. This is critical safety. This is a critical safety issue, and I'm glad you're prioritizing it. $750,000 to focus on work order reductions within DGS. As prior chair of the committee with jurisdiction over DGS, I know how long some of these work orders can remain open, causing safety issues and headaches for district employees and residents. I also want to thank you for your work on the DGS Process Improvements subtitle. Process improvements are not glamorous, but they help us get the job done and done right. I'm looking forward to seeing the implementation of this subtitle, especially additional work orders reported on DGS's public dashboard and the results of the annual school readiness checklist. Thank you for striking the subtitle that would have gutted my Greener Government Buildings Act. My staff have been working with the agency prior to the budget being released to understand what changes they wanted to make. I hope we can now continue those conversations outside of the budget process. Thank you for once again restoring funding to the Office of the Ombudsperson for Children. This has gotten a little ridiculous. How many times we have had to fight this fight. I hope that this office can finally move on from this interference so that it can focus on its mission, protecting children. I also noted the $1.35 million restoration for the Safe Shores contract. I'm glad my committee was able to send a bit of money to help meet this need. Safe Shores is such a critical part of our safety net for children, but every year we have to fight to get their funding back. Thank you for restoring some of the cuts the mayor made to the Commission on Poverty so they can have at least one staff person. As your committee report notes, 13% of DC residents live in poverty. If this commission is going to make a difference, it must have staff to support their work. Finally, thank you for funding a staff member at the Office of the Deaf, Blind, and Hard of Hearing to help council fulfill requests for interpretation services. I think this is going to make a difference in the council's ability to be fully accessible to the public. I'm looking forward to having the office's expertise available to us to support our work. I look forward to voting in support of your budget recommendations, and congratulations again. And thank you to you and your staff for this tremendous amount of work and hours spent preparing for this markup.
Thank you. Councilmember Zachary Parker.
Thank you, Chairperson Louis George, and congrats to your team on putting together your fiscal year 25 report for this committee. The committee has the responsibility of overseeing agencies that provide critical services to district residents, including the Department of General Services, which builds and maintains public facilities, as well as the Child and Family Services Agency, which, among other things, assists children in need of supervision or facing neglect. The report contains a number of critical investments in these important agencies. I will highlight just a few, and I'm glad to see millions more dollars put towards preventative HVAC maintenance for our public schools, as well as other district facilities, over $300,000 for additional lock and door repairs in DCPS to address security risks, expanding DGS's public work order dashboard to include all client agencies. I appreciate the one-time funding for the grandparent caregiver program, investments towards facilities, as well as protections for our home visiting and Safe Shores program. In particular, I would like to underscore the following recommendations contained in the committee report that address problems my team has noticed or that have been flagged by Ward 5 constituents. And I will just share a few of them. DGS should include outdoor lighting in its preventative maintenance program to ensure lighting outages are identified early. I know that lighting issues have been a particular pain point in the parking lot shared by the Joseph A. Cole Rec Center in Ward 5 and the Wheatley Education Campus. Second, DGS should publish a schedule for loose litter pickups and service of outdoor accessible restrooms by DPR properties and improve its documentation of completion of those tasks. Third, DGS should install standardized playground equipment and stockpile extra parts wherever possible, especially for common pieces like swing sets, fencing, and gates. It should not take a year plus for a simple repair. Fourth, DGS should take more steps to hold contractors accountable for incomplete or ineffective work. And then for fifth, DGS should develop a plan for coming into compliance with the Department of Buildings and Department of Licensing and Consumer Protection requirements for inspection and certification of elevators. All in all, I think the committee report is strong. I did have a couple of questions. First, for the Caregiver Subsidy Eligibility Amendment Act, I believe that's just a one-time funding for fiscal year 25, or is the whole legislation funded?
Correct, one-time funding.
And do you have a sense of how many participants may be able to benefit from that? Or is it just a first come, first serve?
CFSA does not track this data, so we don't have a sense, but it is first come, first service.
Okay. For those watching, the legislation aims to better compensate grandparents and family caregivers looking after those in the care of CFSA. And I think, as Councilmember Fruman mentioned, that will go a long way. Second, we received this email. I'm not going to ask you to go by it, but from DGS. But I did want on the record you to have an opportunity to respond. One thing in particular, they note concerns around potentially driving DGS in a deficit before the fiscal year begins. I want us to work together before our first vote to just make sure we address that. What I don't want, and I hate that this came to us literally at the 12th hour, is to make sure that we can ensure DGS is set up for success. So Chairperson Louis George, I don't know if you've seen the letter. You may not have, as you've been chairing, or you want to respond, but I think it's important on the record to speak to it, as I imagine some of what's in this letter will then be shared out to school communities and constituents, positioning that our committee is weakening the DGS budget when I don't necessarily think that is the intent of this markup.
I will just say our report is balanced. Any policy proposals have been verified and vetted by OCFO to determine that they have adequate resources. And yes, the letter was later than we'd hoped to have. We'll continue to work with DGS as well as the chairman's office, as well as our outstanding budget office as well to make sure things are well in the future. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, congrats again, and thank you all for all your hard work on this.
Thank you. At this time, I move the report and recommendations of the Committee on Facilities and Family Services on the fiscal year 2025 budget for agencies under its purview, with leave for staff to make technical, conforming, and editorial changes. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please indicate by saying no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it and the motion passes. Thank you. Before I adjourn, I'd like to share a couple of appreciations. I first want to say a huge thank you to the entire budget office team, especially Kyra Smith, our amazing budget analyst, Ann Phelps, Jim Budoff, and the rest of the budget team. I want to thank David in the Office of General Counsel is assigned to us. Thank you, David, for always being available for our many asks and our many questions. In the Secretary's office, I want to thank Don Evans and Nyasha for the many hours we've spent together figuring out how to best make council hearings as accessible as possible for the district residents with disabilities. And thank you to Jamie, who is our analyst with the Office of the Chief Financial Officer. I also would like to thank my committee and legislative staff for their hard work on this report and the rest of our work together in this budget year. I first want to thank Will Perkins, my committee director. Will Perkins has been with me since I started at the council in January of 2021. And we have been on this road together. He has served legislative director. He served in many roles. Without any prior council experience, he came into the council and his presence was immediately felt. He is professional. He is such a dedicated public servant. Will be leaving us at the end of this council period. So this is his last budget oversight hearing. And so I wanted to just take a special moment to just thank him for his incredible dedication and work to district families, district students, to me, to Ward 4, to this entire council. Will and I both came in sort of like, all right, what is possible? What can we do? And at every moment we have found a way out of no way and made things possible here in the district. And so it has been a great honor to work with Will Perkins. And I am grateful. This committee is grateful for all his incredible work. The district is grateful for his incredible work. And he will certainly be missed, but we appreciate you and we love you and we wish you nothing but the best in the future years to come. Thank you.
Second.
I would also like to thank Tosha. I would like to thank Sebastian. Sebastian holds down. So Sebastian started as a Crunch Fellow and he quickly became a member of this team, and he has held down the family services portion of this committee and has done a phenomenal job doing so. Everyone who talks with him, every stakeholder comes to me afterwards and says, we just love Sebastian. He cares so deeply about people in this community, and it shows. I want to thank Sebastian for his hard work. Could not have had this committee markup and this work without you, and really appreciate you as a member of this team. I want to thank the rest of my staff for keeping things running, especially during this budget season. So thank you to Kelly, Sharniza, Camille, Jim, Barbara, Oscar, and Ben. We're truly a team over here, and I appreciate all of you. And thank you, most importantly, to my committee members and my colleagues for being incredible colleagues and working together in all of our committees and all of the work that we do. You all are amazing and outstanding public servants. This is my favorite committee because it includes my favorite council members, and I am biased. It is true, but it's the truth. And so I just wanted to note that. Thank you all. Obviously, we are not done yet. We look forward to working with the chairman and the rest of the council to ensure the final fiscal year 2025 budget is a budget that's transformative and helps meet the needs of our city. So with that, the business before this committee having concluded, the time is now 1:36 p.m. This additional meeting of the Committee on Facilities Family Services is now adjourned. Thank you.